Hello and welcome to Rauta's Metal Reviews. It's time to go in the world of black and death metal, or just blackened death metal. This comes from Poland. It's a debut album by the band called Nihilvm. Now, this band's first contact for me was pretty much prior to Beyond the Gates 2025, where these guys played. I was supposed to get an interview, but let's be honest about it. Sometimes alcohol gets in the way. I kid you not, this was the official reason I got there, why the interview wasn't happening, but it happens. This is not to mock the band, this is just to saying, like, sometimes party on and all that stuff. At Beyond the Gates, however, I also got this very, very fresh copy prior to the actual release date from the very label releasing the debut album. This is Terratur Possession's release, and now I'm already, oh no, stuck with the booklet. Seems like the jewel case is already, falling into pieces thanks to brutal treatment and all, but we'll try to deal with it. I mean, I'm pointing out to the very, very seedy tray dropping its pieces on my lap. Maybe it's a lap dance time. Jokes aside, this one comes from Poland, now a 4-piece of a band. Prior to this one, it seems, at least according to Metal Archives, which is not obviously always in point with the facts and all, used to be more like a duo, but ever since 2023, the band has been operating as a 4-piece of a band, and this is their first album by the very lineup. Now, this is, in a way, somehow very typical Polish sounding metal band, and I guess this goes to the very fact that Poland has always been strong both in death metal and black metal. So with that as a background fact, we can safely say Nihilvm has totally gone to the roots in so many ways. From death metal we have bands like Vader, Hate, Decapitated and all, and of course from black metal department we have bands like Graveland, Behemoth and so on. So when you have a Polish band that is going for extreme metal and putting together some of the ingredients from best of both worlds fashion, then you pretty much have albums like this coming out from Nihilvm. Now, you don't obviously have to watch me just putting the album together. Let's just put this Metal Archives site for the backdrop. Ancient Cosmic Emanation. And here it says, black death metal with astral death, darkness, space. Space gets me going on. Is it a sci-fi band, or is it more like, hey, space is so fucking dark, so it's gonna be fascinating? I mean, I do love space for that very reason, or actually both reasons. For science, as well as, how inspiring it can be when you stare at the endless galaxies and stars and just wonder about how small we are in this very world, where it's just darkness coming from the skies with a little bit of glimpse of light with stars. I mean, it's pretty fucking fascinating still at this age. Now, obviously, this band is still mostly metal rather than going very sci-fi with the stars and shit. I mean, look at these guys. They kind of have the black metal corpse paint-like look with their bullet belts and, leather vests and all that stuff. You really can't go more metal than this with the very band. So, what can we expect from their debut album is pretty much blackened death metal. This is about 39 minutes with 8 tracks, so pretty basic in that standard. And if you're thinking about this, okay, it says Malignant Voices here, July 29th. Well, when you click for the other versions, you will figure out that actually the digital version is just what we're talking about here. I got the information from the label itself, Terratur, that this is more like early September release when it comes to the CD. So there you have it. So that's why it's not even updated on the site. Obviously I'm doing this in August, so I have my CD in my hands prior to the official release. What you have in the cover is obviously this kind of a pyramid which is pointing towards the sky and all. Now, I don't know the history of this particular image, but it takes me back to the ages and eras when people from South America were just basically building these pyramids, sacrificing human lives to please God and all that stuff, and sky was, with space and all, very inspiring place. Now, if you stare at the cover, taking it in the picture of these planets and all, it doesn't really make much of a sense. but it makes a good cover nonetheless. Musically, Nihilvm's music is indeed more on the death metal side of thing, but it has this blackened crusting or icing on the cake, which really gives this little bit of a black death metal vibe of thing. But if you really start dissecting the songs, thinking about the production, including the vocals, which are more grunting than your typical growling, it's almost like they're shouting. Yeah, it doesn't sound that much black metal. I mean, whether you take a look at individual riffs or you focus on the production, we can safely say that it is more blackened death metal than black death metal. But this is genre nitpicking and nobody gives a shit about it except me because, well, I have to put my voice on it and try to point out things that might be relevant to you. And if it doesn't bother you, I'm sorry, you're watching the wrong channel anyway. So musically, when Nihilvm is doing their blackened death metal, what does it mean? It means going basically very back to the traditions, and I mean that it's not like they're going to the 80s or early 90s with their death metal, but it's definitely kind of a tapping the very original eras of the given style. I mean, they are kind of taking their energy from the roots, or at least they sound like that. I am not saying they are going to very specific era or place like Morrisound from Florida death metal or Sunlight from Sweden. I'm not saying any of that, but I mean there is this kind of a traditional death metal feeling coming through the whole music. But because it's blackened in nature, it kind of starts pointing the fingers towards Poland, and that's when I'm thinking bands like Behemoth. Obviously they don't sound modern day Behemoth, but there is some similar DNA, maybe shared DNA in their music. Then again, I also get a little bit of Deus Mortem black metal feeling from Poland, which is once again going to the same roots. So something is very Polish. I've been listening to a lot of Polish music through the decades and reviewing a lot of them because there are lots of actually Polish labels sending me lots of Polish metal through the years, and obviously I have heard my fair share of Polish death metal and black metal and death black metal. So something really resonates, but I really can't put my finger on it. So for example, if somebody was dropping names like Hate, Decapitated Vader, like I did in the beginning, none of these sound like that. So more like this is, in a way, in an alternate reality kind of a thing, what Behemoth might be doing if there were more into, say, less technical output and going back to the roots in a way. Now, obviously, early Behemoth was pure pagan black metal, so there's none of that. But they did have their Morbid Angel era with the, death metal thing, quite technical way, and then moving on once again to something more like death black metal. And somewhere through that, road, there's almost like a moment you're going to hear that snapping sound, like that's when Nihilvm was born. Like, I'm not saying they are Behemoth worship band or even inspired by the very band I'm talking about here, but like saying there are some same maybe Slavic death black metal thing which is somehow bringing that to my mind, and I cannot deny it. I would be lying to you and to myself if I wasn't. But saying that this comes from the blackened death metal world is something that probably brings some name to you, and yours, the names that you're talking about, might be very different from mine, and that's what I think is the key take on this one. They do their death metal in a way it's heavy. It's a very dark and it's very violent, but it's not exactly the super fast playing kind of stuff that is all over her face. Once again, like bands like Hate and Decapitated are doing that. And this is not exactly that. So it's more like this blackened thing is kind of, slowing them down in a way and putting them more into the old school ways, rather trying to be this hyperactive, hyper fast, super technical, in your face kind of a straightforward death metal. So calling it death black or just blackened death metal, it's meaningless. What you just need to understand that calling it just pure death metal without this black metal or blackened things mentioned might give you a little bit of a different idea what this band is all about. The outcome is pretty cool, and I must say this is an album that is very easy to listen to, easy to enjoy and all that stuff. But if there's one but, I could say they still don't have the songs that you could call hit material. The kind of instantaneous ones that are like, wow, this is so cool because of this and that riff. And if you don't think death metal or black metal have them, you haven't been listening enough to those genres to figure out what is a hit song. I could list plenty, but goes beyond the scope of this particular review. What I'm trying to say here is this is definitely worth watching and listening to. I mean, watching like if you see them live and all, but still a little bit work and progress when it comes to, finally delivering those punchy blows, which are like, wow, it's gonna blow my mind. At this point, they are doing kind of a very typical debut album. So strong sounding, they have figured their own style, but they haven't yet figured out what to do or how to do those hit songs. So a little bit work in progress, but so far, so good. So give it a go. You have links provided in the description box so you can start enjoying right away. So now you know. And if you need more information, obviously the links might give you a little bit of clue where to find that. And if it doesn't, or if they don't, well, Google it. Anyway, off you go, and thanks for being with me. Bye-bye.